Greetings, Poe fans. Welcome to another edition of Poe Unplugged. I am Carmen Bolden.
And I am Jeanie Smith, and we are
The Potastic Two.
Come zoom with us into the Unbook Club dedicated to the works of Mr. Edgar Allan Poe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another wonderful, exciting edition of Poe Unplugged. Now, as I did my intro to some kind of weird talk show, I don't know why, we are going to be discussing Edgar Allan Poe's manuscript in a bottle. And as you can see, we've got some nice little backgrounds going around that if you stare at them too long, you're like looking at some kind of weird abstract painting. But it's all good. So as usual, we have our wonderful, cast and crew of the Poe Unpluggers, unpoers, and just weirdos, in my opinion.
The Poe
That's
Unplugged
just
group.
yeah, the Poe Unplugged weirdos, but okay, Poe Unplugged group. So anyway, we're going to discuss manuscript in a bottle, which I want to start off by saying it reminds me a whole lot of the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym, because we're looking at the wonderful seas and going that route. Plus, it also reminds me of the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes.
So that's just what I want to start us off at. So let's jump on in. And who wants to start us off? Let's go and get our life vests on and start the discussion. Not all at once. Come
We
on.
also read Descent into the Maelstrom a while back,
Yes.
didn't we?
The other one, yes.
And
Yes.
that is similar too.
Mhm.
Sadie
Yeah.
is listening tonight.
Oh.
My sister's dog is here with me, so Sadie is going to listen.
She's so cute.
Sadie's like, yeah, look at that tongue coming out. It's like, yes, I'm cute. You know I'm cute. Just go ahead.
Oh,
But
yes.
all right. Good job, Sadie. She's going to give us some insight into the wonderful world. And here's my question. I'll just go ahead and start it off since nobody's going to jump in.
All right.
My question is why would Poe, now I know he lived mostly in Baltimore and New York and stuff, and he was born in Boston, which are all on the water.
Yeah.
So, but what seems to be his fascination with writing about water? Because I don't think the man spent a lot of time on boats, in my opinion.
Well, he did go over to England
Mhm.
and
Well, he
come
was
back.
like 3.
Yeah.
Wasn't he? He was a 3, and then he came back when he was like, what, 5 or 8?
No, he was about 5 and then came back, I think, when he was about 10 or 11. He was a little bit older, like to where he did remember things. So
I think it was his brother. His brother was a sailor, and
Yeah.
I
That's true.
think he really idolized his brother, Henry.
mhm.
And I feel like, for me, for a while, like, he was trying to do what he was doing. Like, he couldn't really be the sailor. He didn't really want to be the sailor, but he the idea of writing as the sailor. Because I think, when we did the author Gordon Pym, we had talked about like how some of the characters were based off of him and his brother and that relationship, and some of those
Mhm.
stories that were told him by when he was at sea. So I think those kind of things were like those adventure type stories were popular during the time, but I
Yeah.
think he had a personal interest just because of who his brother was.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I had looked up because just thinking about like the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and
Yeah.
that was written, I wrote down the date, now I can't find it.
I believe it was 1860 something.
78, I think 1878. Or, I'm sorry,
I
no,
was close.
1778.
Yeah, one of those.
1778. Yeah.
Mhm.
Then I think it was republished and he changed it just a little bit in 1814. Okay.
Mhm.
So
In 1814, we took a little trip.
I knew you were going to do that. And I was about to tell you, don't do it.
You started it. Sorry.
But Poe published this in 1833 in the Baltimore Saturday Visitor because he had entered their contest
Mhm.
for a $50 prize. He entered 6 stories, and this was one of them. And that collection of stories went on to be in his Tales of the Grotesque and Arabesque. And I wrote down what it was. Originally, they wanted him to do around 11 stories, but he had 9 after he did the 6. And it was Metzingersing. I always mispronounce that because I've heard it pronounced multiple ways. It's about the fire
Of
and the
course.
horse. Yeah, it's a really good story. The Duc de la Omelette, which is really funny. A Tale of Jerusalem, Loss of Breath, Bon Bon, let's see, I can't read my writing. It's Epimanus or something, Lionizing the Visionary, and then of course, manuscript found in a bottle. And so,
My question is, why would you call that grotesque?
well, I think based on
Well, what was the other word you
or
said? Grotesque and what?
Arabesque,
Arabesque.
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 I think it's
Oh,
based on some of the stories and just the gothic tendencies within the stories. And I think that's why, because it was not, it's something odd and unusual. It's not the romance
Mm.
Well, that
literature.
bomb bomb story or bonbon story, that whole
Yeah.
thing is weird and I
It,
would think grotesque in a way,
yeah.
like comical
Yeah.
grotesque, dark humor,
Yeah.
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and anything unnatural or
Yeah.
surreal back then would have been thought of as being grotesque.
For the
Hmm.
time,
Not
yeah, for the time.
necessarily how we mean ugly,
Yeah.
but just weird, exotic, disturbing because it's so different from anything you've ever read before.
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, most of the Baroque period was considered that because it was just odd and well, you had gargoyles and stuff. But at the same time, anything that didn't fit the norm was considered grotesque. But what
Hmm.
I'm saying is I don't picture, and it could be that it wasn't defined as such with the manuscript in a bottle. But
Hmm.
that story doesn't strike me as one of those that's too far out there, I guess, in my opinion, because
Yeah.
when I was, reading it and thinking about it and stuff, because I could see everything happening as something that would be real for that time.
Yeah.
Being on a ship, being, you know, writing stuff down, because, it was either half the time you were trying to sink or not swim, or sink or swim and not sink, one of the two, who knew? But but I'm just saying that I guess in today's society, when people would see that title, they would automatically assume that it would be something fitting with more modern norm, as Dr. Jeff explained.
Yeah.
And that was the thing is you would think with all the other publications and all the other modernizations that they've done with all these old novels and stories and stuff that somebody would have renamed that by now, and published it in a different avenue or talked about it in a different way.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why I'm like, if I was still in the classroom and my students saw this, that would be like, oh, we're going to see something gory. We're going to talk about like zombies or, Walking Dead type of thing. And it'd be like, no, that's not how it goes. So,
Well, but Jeannie, think about it. Okay,
You got
this
the
was
ghost
a
ship.
ghost ship, and there's a whole lot of strangeness going on with that.
however, there are actually ghost ships in today's society that are real because there are ships that they found bobbing in the water that they are fishing vessels and the sailors had died because they couldn't find any food and they've washed up on shore. This has been taking place in Japan and South Korea and places because they're North Korean ships
Okay.
that this is happening to. So ghost ships, yes, I understand that they're not they're not as surreal as you would think in today's society, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But not a lot of people read a lot of news and pay attention to a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess, it's like, ooh, ghost ships and all that
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah, like to your
I'm like,
point, Jeannie, I kind of felt like the beginning of the story was like a very realistic account of like a sailor, right? And
mm-hmm.
And don't hate me, Edgar Allan Poe. I know you won an award for this, but I kind of found it a little bit boring because it kind of
Mhm.
lacked some of the character excitement that Pym had. However, the second part, the rest of the story, once we kind of get onto this weird ghost ship, because we're assumed to believe that they're ghosts, which not really overly explained. Then I was like, okay, well now I'm interested. So for me, it almost feels like it kind of is like part one, part two. The second part, I really I enjoyed that. I enjoyed thinking that they were ghosts, and that somehow he was among the living, among the dead. And this was his last chance to get his little message out before he joined them. Davy Jones Locker, kind of Bob you were saying about Pirates of the Caribbean, and so I like love the second half. The first half, like yeah, of course, we get it all the time as authors. Oh, it started slow, and I hate to say, oh, it started slow, but it started slow for me just because I'm not necessarily a fan of nautical type stories. And Carmen, you're gonna hate me. Jaws, even though I love the movie Jaws, ruined it for me because I'm scared of the ocean.
Understandable. No,
Look at that movie. Those
I'm
movies.
definitely afraid of sharks. I have shark
Yeah.
phobia. There is a term for it, but I just can't think of what it's called. And kind of ironically, I'm wearing my Santa Jaws socks, and it's like shark therapy for me because my husband bought them for me, so I have to wear them. So anyway, as we digress.
Well, and it kind of works with the background behind me. With,
Yeah.
it
Mhm.
starts out with just a normal ship at sea, and then all of a sudden it delves into where now you have these apparitions of and in the water and the boat and everything, which, that kind of goes with what Holly said. It's like having two different stories written by the same person that's going together.
Mhm.
You start off slow because it's like he has to go through the mundane of what's going on the ship,
Mhm.
and that's the normal. You expect that, but you're kind of like, can we speed it up? Can we move it along? Can we have a little drama here or something? And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden is like, well, that went way out there. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we really got into it.
And I got a crazy thing that you guys are going to think I'm completely nuts on this thing. But
Uh-oh.
when it starts out and he explains that he's on the ship and he's in Batavia or some,
Yeah.
whatever the island is no
Mhm.
longer called, that is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He was, he described some of the things that was on the ship. And what
Mhm.
I noted, one of the things that he had said was on the ship, he just, well, I don't know, it's in there someplace. Uh, he emphasized the other stuff he gave, like ghee, I remember that, and something else and something else. And then he said cases of opium. And I got thinking, well, maybe he had a little party in there or something.
I thought so
And
too.
the more he helped himself too, the wackier he got.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that that makes any sense to anybody but me, but I think he's kind of like maybe got a little opium in there.
Opium
And
dream.
to what Holly was just saying is that when he first starts talking about all these terrible mishaps that he's going through, he's very detailed and drawn out, and it
Mm-hmm.
goes on and on. But as you read, it seems like in the latter half of the story again, Holly, it seemed to me that when he gave the accounts of these horrid things, they were much more concise and quick. Like he was in a hurry to hurry up and write this stuff down. Because remember, we don't know really what the story. All we know is what he wrote.
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of like, I want to hurry up and write this stuff down. And I think that's why he made it short. But I still think maybe he got hooked up on the happy sauce a little bit in there.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And that would
It could
actually
be.
that would kind of make sense because if he was on a ship that was delivering opium from the Silk Road,
Mm-hmm.
that would make sense why there was a whole bunch of barrels of opium on there that he was hanging out with. And, just like if they had at Pirates of Caribbean, if they had rum on the ship,
Yeah.
the
Right.
people, because they were getting bored, there's nothing to do out in the middle of the ocean except for not, not die uh,
Mm-hmm.
while you're bobbing around on a wooden boat. And so why not have some little happy time and drinking and opium, and it would kind of make sense that he was a little happy when he wrote the second part, when he all of a sudden the ghost shows up and it's like, woo! Instead of seeing like the purple dinosaur or the yellow chicken with the Tyrannosaurus Rex arms, coming at you. I'm just saying, if
Okay,
people
are you
hallucinate.
bringing Barney into this discussion?
Trust me, that would be something that I would hallucinate because I hate Barney so bad.
Well, anyway, well, one thing I want to bring up that I noticed because I listened to it on my way home today. I actually listened to Jason Markiewicz's uh, rendition of it, and it's so good. If you haven't listened to it, it's free on YouTube. He did an incredible job with it. And then when I got back home, there was a couple things I wanted to like look up in the actual story and like see it with my eyes. And so this was one of them, and I wrote this down. Let's see. It's in the story. It says he found a manuscript in the captain's cabin, and this is, I quote from the story, the paper for the present manuscript. And so
Right.
to me, that almost sounds like he took something that the captain on the ghost ship had written and maybe adapted it. And so that made me start thinking, okay, whose story is this really? And and it's like, did he throw the bottle? Did he not throw the bottle? And it's like, it's
It's
very,
Schrodinger's cat all over again.
yeah, it just kind of made me think. And that's why when I was listening to it, I was like, hold on a second, did I hear right? And so that when I got home, I looked at that and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget about it because that really stuck out to me. Like Poe threw in something to make you think, like, okay, it's an unreliable narrator. Who really wrote this story and how did it really get back so we could enjoy the tale, like if it had been real?
I love
But if
that because you could take
okay,
it even
sorry, Harley.
further. Oh, sorry, Jeannie. It's like we're
No, go
lagging.
ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, that's really interesting concept. You can even take it further that he throws it in there, and then a ghost ship is going. So they're gonna have his bottle, and it
Yeah.
kind of could happen again, like kind of on repeat. That's cool. I didn't really
Yes.
think of that.
Yeah.
I like
Ah,
that.
but if we go by Mike's reckoning with all the opium,
Yep.
is it
Is he
truly a
agreeing?
ghost ship?
Mm-hmm.
And did he write it and not know it? Did
Yeah.
he think it was the captain who wrote it, but it's actually him who's been on the ship by himself, but he's a little loopy
Right.
and he's hallucinating?
Yep.
So
Yeah, could
that
be.
would be the other way.
Yeah, they could all not really be there, not even be ghosts.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the other idea I thought of too was that when he was on the first ship, that when the typhoon came and they were in the
Good ship.
whirlpool and the
Oh,
ship was,
God.
broken up and he and the buddy were still alive, but then he realized there was this other ship and he leapt from the ship over to the other ship. It's like, okay, could this really happen? I'm sure there's some plausible situation where it could, but at the same time, is it him hallucinating from the opium and or he was hallucinating at first, but then he died, and this is like him in some kind of purgatory or something.
Well, it is possible, I mean, in those days that they would pull up beside another ship,
Hmm.
especially if they found it floating and they wanted to
Yeah,
loot it. So they have ways of using the ropes, then they would pull them together where they were like right next to each other and then drop the gangplank to where they could just walk back and forth on it. Now,
mhm,
him jumping across, yes, that's very possible if they're close enough, if he took a running leap. And
right.
if he's on opium, he probably was happy enough to where it's like, a Superman. Hey. Okay. So, but it is one of these things that you have to think about why Poe put certain things, but this goes back to what I've always said. Poe writes stuff that leaves it to the reader to the point to where they can just insert however they want, how it happens, what's going on, and it could be an opium induced hallucination, the whole thing. You
Yeah.
know, he could have just written the whole manuscript himself, stuffed it in a bottle, and had it with him and just taught, fell into the ocean. And that's how it ended up in the water,
Yeah.
So I think really it's just interpretation. Once more, it's a Poe led interpretation.
Yeah.
So,
Would any of you think that maybe throughout the story, from the beginning to the end, he's sort of doing sort of a self-awareness check? And
Yeah.
what I mean by that is at the very beginning, he talks about, he likes to argue, or I forgot the exact verbiage, but he
Mhm.
likes to confront or argue with or debate the German moralist. And he says something about, well, I'm criticized for my logic or something. I forgot exactly what the words are.
Mhm.
yeah.
But then toward the end of the story,
Mhm.
he starts to realize everything is just not black and white. Everything is not logic. There are some things that are a little bit different, and maybe I'm not as smart as I thought I was. It
Yeah.
just kind of hit me. Is that he's kind of like doing a self-analysis as he's going through this thing.
Yeah, I would agree with you because at the beginning he talks about where he came from and why he decided that he needed to leave all of what he had and go on this journey. So I think, Mike, that may be a good point that you're hitting on.
I don't
And
know.
it also makes sense that someone in this particular situation starts off on a boat and just a normal tour, voyage, whatever you want to call it, but then all of a sudden come into play a life or death situation, and then you start thinking and realigning what you used to think because
Right.
now you're like, oh, well, wait a minute. Maybe I was wrong, or maybe things aren't exactly the way they should be.
Mhm.
Because, most people in life and death situations, they have a attack of conscience, I guess is what we could
Right.
call it. So that would fit also with what Mike is, alluding to with the whole thing about the beginning and then the end. That would be the way I would interpret it.
Mhm.
About he would definitely rethink things if he
Yeah.
had gone through that much of a change
Mhm.
or life or death situation, in my opinion.
I think it was a wonderful point because if any of you, I know I have personally been
Mhm.
in a situation that it did make you kind of wake up and think, wait a minute, what is life really all about anyway? And kind of like think about things and change your perspective on life to some extent. I've had an experience where I got lost in the mountains one time when I was much, much younger, and I was out there in the middle of summer in the Superstition Mountains of Arizona thinking,
Mm.
how the hell am I going to get out of here? But
Ooh.
as I laid there overnight looking at the stars, I did some very profound thinking. And I
Mhm.
thought, well, life is different. So maybe old Poe is going through that in this story. You think, hey, life is rough.
That's
Yeah, it
I
would
true.
don't
make
know.
sense to me.
Well, and let's see, Poe would have been, let's see, what,
24.
24? Yeah. So maybe he was having an existential crisis at this moment when he
Maybe,
wrote it. That's a
maybe
interesting concept to think about.
it's a good story.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's a very huh, okay, in depth. Sorry,
It,
I had to go there.
Ah,
In depth story,
it's
oh,
like
especially
the
when we go
tell
to the bottom of the ocean. Sorry, what, Dr.
it's
Jeff?
like the Telltale Heart and a few of his others, in which the narrator is trying to convince us, I'm not crazy. I'm telling you the truth. This is what happened. I'm not crazy.
yeah,
Yeah. And
absolutely.
and sometimes that is the hardest thing, especially when you're writing, is to make it believable and make it acceptable for all readers. And some readers, and I have met these people that won't read anything because it is not strict and to their, directive. If anything, like when Harry Potter first came out, I know a lot of people just went buku and cray cray over that book. And I'm like, what's the big deal? It's not, the only way that it could be real is if it's real. why do you automatically think it's real? And especially they wouldn't let their children read it because they thought it was going to turn them into wizards and witches and all this kind of stuff. And I'm going, no, most of them don't need help with their attitudes, so they don't need to read the book. I'm just saying. Uh, but that's the thing. It's like, I think Poe, had that experience maybe in real life with the people that criticized his works.
Yeah.
And he wanted to just say, look, I'm writing. This is something that I enjoy doing. And you may not believe it, but I want to make it real enough that you could possibly believe, that it happened, that it was a real thing. And I feel that with the Telltale Heart. I feel that with, this one, Manuscript in a Bottle, anything that he's written, like, Hop Frog, when we talked about Hop Frog.
Mhm.
I could see that happening, especially in those times, you know. So it just, I think he was writing it as a way of therapy, in my opinion,
Yeah.
because he was definitely reaching that midpoint of where he had a crisis and he had to figure out how to get over it.
Hmm.
He had to build a bridge to get over it.
Yeah. Because I
I
mean,
gotta stop that. Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Well, the puns just keep
I can't
coming.
help it.
The
They
puns keep
just keep
rolling
on
on the
coming.
river. So anyway, but I
Oh,
mean, think about too. I mean,
sorry.
because he had already been to University of Virginia, he had been in the Army, he had been at West Point, and now
Mhm,
he was settling down to trying to be a writer, make a living as a writer. And
mhm,
I can only imagine when he was first starting, and this was really the first recognizable story when he won that contest. And I think a lot of what how he continued and became an editor and things like that, it kind of hinged on him winning this contest.
Absolutely.
Well, and the poor boy was suffering from so much abandonment
Yeah.
from the time he was young, and then now he's uh, got abandoned yet again by his own, foster father. His foster mother died and left him, and then, John kind of just kicked him to the curb, and
Yeah.
so he probably was floundering. He himself was lost at sea, but on land.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, because he was lost in his own world, he was wanting to be a writer. He was good at it, but at the same time, he was getting so much backlash for
Hmm.
it that he was struggling to make people notice him.
Yeah.
Well, didn't he
So,
get kicked out of West Point?
yes,
Hmm.
Yeah,
yeah,
they kind of
not for
asked
his,
nicely for him to leave
yeah,
because he wouldn't
because it
follow the
wasn't,
rules.
yeah, it wasn't about, if I remember correctly, it wasn't because of his grades. He was just not following the rules. He would show up
Right,
late
Hmm.
and do all that kind of stuff. So, and in my opinion, that goes along with
right.
coming from a time of where you'd have to we're just assuming here that John was very strict in his upbringing, and when he came from the military is very strict in itself. So yeah, and then West Point, come on, it's not known as one of the best in the best that there is because they were very lax in their discipline. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah, so he was definitely getting cracked on from all different worlds. But I do like this one. I mean, it did remind me of the descent into Maelstrom, the whole
Yeah.
whirlpool, the whole thing, and it's like it's a good thing I don't develop a phobia easily because since the stories that he writes about, the huge whirlpools in the middle of the ocean that sucking ships down, and I'm going, I like cruising. It's one of my favorite things. Stop trying to ruin it for me.
Mhm.
I've had my issues on a boat. I don't take that away from me because I'd rather not, planes are not my thing.
Mm.
Yeah, and let's move
No.
on from that because yeah, we're not even going to talk about that, Jeannie, because she
Yeah.
won't stop talking about that
You have a shark phobia. I don't have a phobia. I just have a nice, healthy knowledge of
obsession with
exactly.
yeah. We're going to move on. We might let her talk about it sometime. Will says likely less ghostly men in this day and age, at least. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely so.
That's one bonus for modern cruises these days.
True.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know though. There's a lot of people die on cruises that nobody knows. That's why they have every ship has a morgue. If you didn't know that, there is a morgue in the lower decks of every ship, and there's always at least one or two bodies off of almost 1 out of 10 cruises.
Mm.
And they got
Don't
a
Wow.
ask
jail.
me how I know. Yeah,
Do
They
what,
also
Mike?
have a jail cell. They also have a jail cell on every one of
yeah,
those
they
cruise
have
Right.
a
ships.
brig.
Hmm.
I've been on 2 cruises in my life, and I don't care to go on another one.
Ah,
I lost count after 15.
Mm.
Leela,
Yeah.
what were you wanting to say? I
Oh, no,
saw
I was just
you.
kind of laughing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say something, but yeah, I mean, I mean, it's true that you would need them because, I mean, think about it. In Edgar's time when he was writing this book about this ship, this was a wooden ship that was made out of wood on water. Okay, so in itself, it was going to be taking on water constantly. It's not like they had the bilges that they do in today's world with the boats and stuff. Usually they had somebody down on the bottom, just taking a bucket and slinging out the porthole windows, or they were walking around in water up to their, shins. So it was only good that water, wood floats, but at the same time, then they had scurvy they had to worry about because, rats, they had a lot of rats to eat the food. That's why they took cats on the ships with them. And that's why we got cats almost everywhere on every continent. They would probably live in Antarctica if they could stand the cold, but I'm just saying
yeah.
they'd had plenty to eat with the penguins. But, they'd had free range chicken. Yay! Because they
Oh my
can't fly
God.
to get away. But
All
I
right,
mean,
Jeannie.
what? I'm just saying, when
I'm
he
gonna have
writes,
nightmares.
I know.
I'm still stuck on
this
the
is
morgue on the boat. Okay, I'm like, this is like my. Is there a doctor on the boat? Like, I'm freaked out
yes,
now.
Yeah,
yes,
that
the
that new
doctor.
show Doctor Odyssey is all about that, but I don't watch it because everybody gets sick or hurt on the ship,
Uh-huh.
and that's not a good cruise if everybody's getting
No,
sick or injured.
No,
no, that would be awful.
no, it would be a memorable cruise though. Because ask me how I know. But anyway,
Morgue sense of humor,
but
Jeannie.
this is what happens when I read Edgar Allan Poe. This is what triggers in my brain all these wonderful thoughts that just starts rolling, and it's like the snowball effect. I can't help it. I'm sorry. It is just,
Hmm.
it is what it is.
Oh,
It's Poe induced mania. That's what I call it.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
What other thoughts about the story? I like also Holly what you said about it seemed like it was two parts. I definitely it was like the past and the present kind of thing in a way. Like his life before and then what,
After,
happened when he
yeah.
started sailing.
Sailing. Okay.
I think at the part where the he got thrown off of the original ship onto the ghost ship, if that's what we're going to call it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
He described that ship as being porous,
Yeah.
but that's weird. I mean, he's already telling the reader what's going to happen. It's going to sink
Mm-hmm.
if it's got holes in it.
Yeah,
I
I thought
thought
that
that
was a
was
kind of a
he said that the
immediate
wood has
clue how the
expanded,
story
and
was going to end.
mhm.
Yeah,
yeah,
but
I
I
thought
mean,
Huh.
what
weird.
porous? I don't know.
Yeah.
Mm.
Let's give away all the wonderful things that are going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah,
and
Hey, that
well,
reminds me of Titanic. Sorry.
This is one of
Go
those
ahead.
Poe's works that the more I read it, and I've read it several times, the more I read it, the more I find.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm just not going to read it for a few years.
Yeah. Well, one other thing too that I found kind of interesting is that the ghost ship, well, first the ship he was on, they didn't give it a name. And Poe always, like in Pym, he named all those different ships, and it was almost hard to keep up with all the names of okay, where is Pym at now? Which ship is he on? And the original ship didn't have a name, so it was like it really didn't mean that much. But then the ghost ship was named Discovery. And so I thought that was just an interesting name to choose. And I tried to look up if there was some kind of historical significance, like what did Poe maybe base that ship, the ghost ship, on a real ship? Couldn't find anything definitive of that. There were some ships in years past that were called the Discovery, but nothing that Poe would have referenced. And so I just wonder, why did he choose that name for the ghost ship?
I don't know about that, but wasn't the Jules Verne book that he wrote off of Pym? Wasn't that didn't that have like a strange Antarctic discovery, or am I crazy? Is that
Um,
And
what that was called? I get them all
An
confused.
Arctic mystery.
Oh, is that okay? I thought it has Discovery in there. I was gonna say, oh, that's kind of cool. Maybe he took it from there, but I guess not.
yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, the Discovery was one of the ships named that brought over the settlers to Jamestown.
Oh,
For some reason, that's popped into my head. So,
and
Okay.
it
because there were
seems to
three
me.
ships. Yes, it was the Susan Constant, the Godspeed, and the Discovery. So, yeah, that's when you said that, I'm like, wait a minute. I taught this. So
Oh, that's
yeah, there were
cool.
these
Yeah.
three, the permanent English settlers to Jamestown in 1607 were brought over on those three ships.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. So that's probably where he got the tie-in with
Very
the name of the ship.
possible. Yeah.
To be
Yeah.
that ship.
It's just a great adventurous name for a ship,
Mm-hmm.
Well,
forward
yeah, I mean,
thinking and optimistic.
yeah. I mean, hey, NASA's used it.
Yeah.
In Star Trek.
Yep.
Yeah, and Star Trek.
Absolutely.
Well,
So,
the ghost ship reminds me of the Flying Dutchman too.
mhm.
Yes.
That legend started in the 1790s, so this was only like 35 or 40 years after that. So that would have been on people's minds, and there was even, an opera written about it and everything.
Right.
So yeah, the this might have been his take on the Flying Dutchman.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. That definitely does.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, and Poe loves to tie in history and everything.
Hmm.
Whether it's mythology way back in the ancient Greek times or just the recent history and stuff like that. So I think that's another reason why he likes to, or he draws in a lot of people, is because he what's the word? Tantalizes a lot of people's different ideas about things or their different loves, whether
Hmm.
it be literature, history, science, which is, oh, wait, that's the 6 degrees. Never mind.
Oh my
I
goodness.
don't know. I think one of the things about Poe that I always liked was that he's and many times he is the villain,
Mhm.
and he writes it in a way that make people love him,
Hmm.
even though
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
really the one that's doing all the bad stuff, like
Hmm.
locking somebody up in a wine cellar or cutting somebody's eyeball out or what he's doing. But
Hmm.
they still like
Absolutely.
him as he's doing it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it appeals to the readers because we like those weird things, apparently.
Yeah,
Hmm.
the gray villain, like you're not necessarily good or bad, the gray, morally gray character.
Yes. Oh
Hey,
yeah.
Alan Rickman was one of the greatest bad guys, in my opinion, and you had to love him. I mean, he was a
Oh
bad
yeah.
guy, but you loved him. And but he could have been a good guy and you'd still love him just because he was. And this is the way I think of Poe. Poe's writing, we'll go back to the Cask of Amontillado. Every
Mhm.
time I read it, one time I'm rooting for Fortunato, and the next time I'm rooting for Montressor. You know, it's like whatever my feelings or whatever my attitude at the time I'm reading it. If I happen to be, feeling a little vengeful, you know, or revengeful.
Hmm.
So it's all depending. So
Yeah.
that's one of the good things of Poe.
Well, Jeannie, you also mentioned like, Poe does use a lot of the, classic literature or
Mhm.
mythology. He even used a term in this story where he says, it made me think of this. I went back to it. He says, I have often been reproached with the aridity of my genius. A deficiency of imagination has been imputed to me as a crime, and the Puritanism of my opinions has at all times rendered me notorious, which it comes from the Greek philosophy of Pyrrho. And so here's one more example where Poe used kind of that
Mhm.
classic Greek literature or mythology.
Yeah, it just goes to show that how educated, and not only just how educated, knowledge wise, but common wise. He was
Yeah.
informal and formal in
Hmm.
his education. He was very worldly, but at the same time, he was very book learned.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's also part of the reason why he wasn't as popular as he should have been. Is just he was a lot smarter than people reading his stuff, you
Yeah.
know, compared to like, and this is not knocking Charles Dickens at all, but he tend to write about the lower class, like, you know what I mean, the economical class where he had come from. And he talked like them. He's like the best at characterization, like talking in the dialect of the time. And I just feel like Edgar Allan Poe, sometimes it's like, I mean, I don't think I'm a stupid girl, but I'm like, yeah, and I don't mind looking up stuff or like that I'm not sure about, but like even like I hadn't even caught that, Carmen. But yeah, so the people at the time, so few people were educated, especially women weren't educated like they are today or got an opportunity. So yeah, I mean, I feel like I think I knew it. I read that somewhere too that they believe he wasn't as popular just because he was writing over a lot of people's heads.
Yeah. Well, and the only and I'm gonna just be very honest about this term because I would have probably just been like, I wouldn't have looked it up, but the weird thing about that word with Pyrrhus is because my husband and I, Nerd City, were looking at this video about idioms, and that term came up last
Mhm.
night, and then ironically, it's in this story, and I was like, okay, this is creepy, but it's Poe. So I thought that was really weird, but sometimes I do gloss over those words that are like the Greek mythology that are deeper than my knowledge of Greek mythology. So, but I will say, like doing the words on Wednesday, pulling out some of these words that Poe uses, I have learned a lot because some of those words I don't use in normal vocabulary. So it's really kind
I
of cool.
I test myself with the words on Wednesday. Do I actually know what that word means without context? Like,
Yeah.
sometimes I do, sometimes I don't.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it just goes and it proves one of the things, especially in that time, that matches up within today's age. Writing and publications and everything are trendy
Yes.
because it's all dependent upon who's going to purchase the manuscript, the short stories, the newspapers, the magazines.
Mhm.
And if you think about it, the day and age that Poe was writing, yes, he was literally writing over the heads of the majority of the population
Mhm.
because not a lot of them even knew how to read, or if they did know how to read, it was such a lower level that he was writing over them and they couldn't understand. And even Dickens being in a different land, being in UK and stuff, he probably, I don't want to use the words dumbed down, but he lowered it to where it would reach the masses.
Made it more colloquial.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you, Dr. Jeff. I couldn't think of the right word to make it work. But at the same time, and just like most everybody knows, some of these words we don't use in conversations anymore because slang, which just simply means shortened language,
Mhm.
came into being. And then everyone started adapting to it and adopting it to the point to where a lot of the old language, the old English as they call it, just kind of left off into the wind.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And where with Poe, it just, yeah, sometimes, like Will said in the chat, you feel dumb when you read Poe because you're
Mhm.
going, what?
I don't know
You know,
that word. Yeah, and the
yeah,
context clues aren't giving
I
me
can't
what I
even use,
need.
yeah, I can't even use the context clues to figure out what he's talking about. But at the same time, some of his stories you want to give up on because you don't want to take the time to
Yeah.
figure it out because
I
it's kind of like an investigation and you're going, oh, if
I
I
like
wanted to look up everything, I would just, write my own story. Yeah.
and I like Dr. Jeff's suggestion of reading an annotated Poe collection where the footnotes give you the definitions. That's fantastic.
hmm Yeah,
Yeah.
I have this one, which it's annotated.
Oh,
It's good,
nice.
but not great because there are quite a few, you know, errors. I wish I had
Yeah.
been a proofreader of the book because there are some misspellings and wrong words or words left out. But
Mhm.
other than that, it's a good annotated and illustrated Edgar Allan Poe. Um, from, let me see what year, 2016.
Okay.
That's not bad.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah. And like you're saying, I mean, sometimes if you get the annotated text, if someone does it right,
Hmm.
it is good. But the one thing that I always hated, especially when I was teaching American history with the kids, they would want to modernize all the writings to the
Yeah.
point to where I'm like, you can't modernize something to the point of where you've lost the whole thing.
Hmm.
Hmm
You can modify to make it work, or you can annotate it, like you're saying, to help with the description. But to modernize it, in my opinion, is like taking this beautiful text and putting it into a text message.
Yeah.
That's what I feel when you modernize something. I'm
Hmm.
like, I don't want to have, BC as because and all this kind of stuff, or
Yeah.
the number two for the 200 or 20 or TWO or whatever. It just kind of ruined it for me. And I
Yeah.
got that way with the Mayflower Compact. It is
hmm
the shortest document, but it's at a 13th grade level. So it's basically freshman of college reading. And I
Yeah.
was having to teach it to eighth grade.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like, I'm not going to modernize this to the point to where it's going to lose what it needs to be. Right. So that's all I'm going to say on that. All
Okay.
right.
All right. Any more thoughts on manuscript found in a bottle?
I liked it.
I did too. It's a good one, and it's a kind of a quick read as well. I mean, quick isn't it short, but it's in depth because of the language, just the level, like the Lexile level. Definitely.
Friday night, I listened to four different versions on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
Different people reading it.
Uh-huh.
And each one lasted about 29 or 30 minutes. That's how
Okay.
long it took to read it aloud. But it
Mm-hmm.
was interesting, to hear it four times, and that really got it into my mind
Yeah, that's a,
as I
that's a
was
great
reading it.
idea. Did you
Mhm.
have one you favored over the other three?
No, not really. I've
Okay.
forgotten who the readers were, but just
Mhm.
on I looked at the first, four out of the first six of them.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, I enjoyed this, and we appreciate you guys so much for joining in every month. It's so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Just coming up, if you guys like saw in the newsletter. So January, we're back to our last Tuesday of the month, and it's going to be January 28th. And there's Sadie again.
Yes.
She's
So
hearing her
cute.
name. We're going to be doing The Mystery of Marie Roget.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I love
Back
that.
to Dupine. And then we already have February lined up as well. That's going to be February 25th, and that's the poem To One in Paradise. And Steve, who was on last month, is going to be our Gothic guest for February. And we were like, why don't you choose? Because he's going to come back. I think he's going to be back in January with us on Poe Unplugged, but he's also going to be there for February. So we're going to look at that poem, but then also we're going to kind of incorporate Alan Parsons' project. That poem, the song is on that album. So we're going to talk about that too. So
Oh, wonderful. I
yeah,
have all of the Alan Parsons Project's
yay.
records,
Awesome.
uh,
Okay.
I
LP,
have that
cassette,
one.
and
Yeah.
CD. And
Okay.
yes, I was just about to mention, the first album from 1976, Tales of Mystery and Imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wonderful because,
Yes.
he, all of the songs, like Professor Dr. Tar and Professor Feather, and
Mm-hmm.
all of them are based on Poe. And there have been several different versions of the album, one with some narration by Orson Welles added.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
but yeah, that I love the Alan Parsons Project, and saw them here in Nashville in 1995 at Tennessee Performing Arts Center, and 1998 at Starwood Amphitheater.
Oh, very
Oh.
cool. Very cool.
Mhm.
I'm not familiar with this. Is it like an audiobook or is it like it's like where you
A
It's
record album.
actual music.
Yeah, it's
It's
Yeah, Alan
music.
music.
Parsons Project is a music group from England,
Oh,
and
okay.
each of the group's record albums has some sort of theme, like robotics or pyramid power, things like that. And um, they don't get played on the radio enough, but every
Yeah.
once in a while you'll hear one of their songs. Oh, well, and then isn't it the Los Angeles basketball team that runs out to one of the
Mhm.
instrumental
Okay.
works by the Alan Parsons Project? Sirius, I think, is the name of it.
Okay.
And the group's biggest hit is "Eye in the Sky."
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that song. Yeah.
And
Yeah, I know that. Okay, I do know that song. All
yeah,
right, I'm gonna look into that.
yeah,
They
look
have an
up
Edgar Allan
Alan
Poe.
Parsons Project.
It's
Alan with
great,
one L,
Holly.
Parsons.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just
He
put it in
was,
chat for you, Holly.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Because I'm trying to think how to spell that.
Well,
yeah.
and Will had a question about it. Wasn't he behind the dark side of the moon?
Yes, yeah, he started out as an engineer, and was a sound engineer on the Beatles records, and
Oh.
Dark Side of the Moon, and then he and a man named Eric Wolfson started their own group, and throughout the 70s and 80s, it was just a studio group. That it was not something you could go to see live.
Mhm.
It was just studio musicians putting together concept albums. But then in the 90s, the group started touring in person,
Okay.
and they've come back to Nashville recently to the Ryman. I didn't get to see them then, but they've been here in the last year or two. So yeah, look up Alan Parsons Project, and
I definitely
all
will.
of the records are wonderful.
Yeah, the great music. And so yeah, so Steve suggested that, and we talked about when we did Poe music, or Poe's influence on music back in season 3 for our pop culture episode. We talked about it in that episode, but then Steve was like, well, if we're going to do that poem, can we bring in a little bit of that too? I said, yeah, that sounds great. So
Cool.
it'll be a lot of fun.
Oh, and just a little heads up here, I put the link to the actual official Alan Parsons project
Mm-hmm.
in the chat,
Yeah.
but they've got it advertised that they're coming out with a Pyramid 2 LP and Blu-ray, the Alan Parsons project on January the 31st, 2025.
Oh,
Okay.
wonderful.
All right.
Yeah, it's gonna have, ooh, nice,
Hmm.
all that wonderful, cool stuff, but Just check it out. It's on the website. That's all I'm
Yes.
saying.
She's about to take a deep dive, I can tell.
Yeah, sorry. I had to get off.
And there's a sea pun for you too.
Yeah, see?
With her little octopus.
Don't go
Yeah.
overboard.
Yeah, exactly. I think we could keep going on and on and on. Oh my goodness.
Not happy.
Yeah, this one's the bad one, and then this one is the happy one. I bought this for my grandniece for Christmas. It's one of those plushies, you can turn it in and out. One
Oh.
side is the bad side and the other one is the happy side.
Oh, yeah.
That's cute.
That is cute.
And I thought, oh, this is kind of appropriate for tonight's discussion
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
because
so
we got 8 tentacles here. 1, 2, 3.
oh my goodness. Yeah, so we'll have because January is kind of a long month, so it will feel like forever when we join back in January.
6
But
weeks from tonight.
yeah, okay,
Mhm.
thank you. I had not counted. I just knew it looked long. And so we just want to say again, thank you. And we are going to have our 100th episode coming out very soon. This Poe Unplugged is 99, our episode
Mm.
99.
Wow.
100 will come out at the end of the month, and we are really stoked about it. And just it's like wow. But yeah, but we just want everybody to have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy
Yeah,
New
same to you
Year,
all.
all the
Yes.
things. We just love you guys and just
Yes.
look forward to it every month.
This Sunday is my birthday.
Oh,
Oh, happy early
birthday!
birthday.
Yes.
And that's the day that my family and I are having our Christmas celebration at my youngest niece's house in Alabama. There are
Nice.
about a dozen or more of us, so we have to
Ooh.
figure out a day when all of us can come together, and it's not
Oh.
always on the actual day.
Okay. Oh, well, that will be so much fun. And then
Well,
we'll
enjoy it, even though it's family.
Thank you.
Sorry, I come from a family that when we got together on those things, it was more of 60 people. So, I come from a really big family. So, not all those people are going to get along. Just teasing. Everybody gets along with family.
oh yeah.
Sometimes you just kind of go, glad to see you. Now I can wait another few months. But anyway,
And Will
but
said
happy early birthday. Yeah.
yes, and Will said, and being that it's a Poe group, have a mysterious Christmas as well. Absolutely. And happy early birthday to you, Dr. Jeff. So,
Yes.
Thank you very much. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
And with Charles Dickens, stay away from the ghosts.
yes.
Any ghosts come visiting, just tell them there's the door.
Send them to
Or
the
the
Ocean
boat.
Ship Discovery.
Go hang out on the boat. We're not here. But
All right.
mysterious, happy Poe out.
Yes.
All right. Have good holidays, guys.
Yeah.
Happy
Bye.
holidays.
Bye,
Bye.
Sadie.
Happy
Bye,
birthday,
Sadie.
Dr. Jeff.
And Micah said, gotta start my gig. Happy holidays. So
Good luck, Micah.
Happy
He's already
holidays.
gone.
Yeah.
Happy holidays,
Happy
Micah.
holidays. Adios. Arrivederci.